Captain Eris Thorne stared through the reinforced viewport of the Vanguard space station, watching the strange, mottled green planet of Krelos V rotate beneath them. The station's imposing silhouette cast a momentary shadow over the planet's surface as they orbited, a fitting metaphor, he thought, for what the Xylar Galactic Alliance did to worlds in its path. 10 years as an officer in the Alliance military had worn down Eris's idealism. When he'd enlisted, he believed in their mission to unite the galaxy under one banner, to spread civilization and protection to developing worlds. Now he understood the truth. The Alliance was primarily concerned with resource acquisition and power consolidation, with lofty ideals serving merely as convenient justification. The cold blue light of his tactical display cast harsh shadows across his weather-beaten face as he reviewed the assignments for his Special Forces unit, Task Force 7, nicknamed the Leviathans for their uncanny ability to survive where others perished. Survival was becoming a specialty in increasing demand as the Alliance pushed into more hostile territories. Captain Thorne, a voice crackled over his comm unit. Marshal Kale requests your immediate presence in the Supreme Command briefing room. Eris acknowledged the message, wondering what fresh hell awaited them now. Marshal Kale's requests were never optional and rarely pleasant. The gleaming corridors of Vanguard Station spoke to the Alliance's technological prowess. Sleek metal surfaces polished to a mirror shine, automated systems anticipating every need, armed guards at strategic junctions. Physical displays of military might were an essential part of Xylar ideology, even in the spaces meant for their own personnel. Entering the briefing room, Eris found Marshal Kale already there, his imposing figure silhouetted against a holographic display of an unfamiliar planet. Several other high-ranking officers stood at attention around the central table, along with a civilian woman in scientific attire who seemed distinctly uncomfortable in the military setting. Captain Thorne, Kale acknowledged without turning. His voice carried the clipped tones of someone who had long ago decided that emotions were inefficient. Prompt as always. Marshal, Eris saluted crisply, despite his private misgivings. The military hierarchy demanded respect, regardless of personal feelings. Kale gestured to the holographic display. This, Captain, is Charybdis, recently discovered in the Outer Reach. Named for the ancient Earth-sea monster, due to the peculiar energy vortices our initial probes detected. The projection zoomed in to show swirling atmospheric patterns and dense, colorful jungles. Our preliminary scans indicate vast deposits of ethenium throughout the planet's crust, perhaps the largest concentration ever discovered. Eris felt a chill run through him at the mention of ethenium. The rare element was the cornerstone of the Alliance's most advanced military technology, from starship drives to weaponry. A planet rich with it would be valued beyond measure by Xylar's high command. Your orders, Captain, Kale continued, are to lead the 3rd Expeditionary Corps to establish a foothold on Charybdis and initiate mining operations. Your Leviathans will spearhead the operation, with the remaining 9,900 troops providing security and infrastructure support. Eris frowned slightly. Sir, what do we know about the environment? Indigenous life? Potential threats? Kale waved a dismissive hand. Initial probes show no signs of intelligent life. The environment presents some challenges, dense vegetation, unusual biodiversity, but nothing that should pose a significant threat to our forces. The atmosphere is breathable with minimal filtration. With respect, Marshal, interrupted the civilian woman, stepping forward. I believe we should conduct more thorough surveys before deploying such a large force. The biological readings we've received are unusual. Kale looked at her with thinly veiled impatience. Captain Thorne, this is Dr. Alara Vance, our chief xenobiologist for this mission. She'll be accompanying your forces to conduct research alongside the mining operations. Dr. Vance met Eris's gaze directly. Captain, the energy patterns and biological signatures from Charybdis don't match anything in our databases. That alone should warrant caution. Dr. Vance, Kale cut in sharply. We've already discussed this. The High Command has deemed the reconnaissance data sufficient. The Athenium deposits are confirmed, and that is our priority. Eris noted the tension in the room, the way the other officers avoided meeting Dr. Vance's eyes. Something felt wrong about this mission. Too rushed, information too scarce. But questioning a direct order from Marshal Kale wasn't an option. "When do we deploy, sir?" he asked instead. "Immediately. The transport vessels are already being loaded. You depart in 6 hours." Kale's tone left no room for further discussion. "The Alliance needs this Athenium, Captain. Success here means advancement for everyone involved." As the briefing concluded and the officers dispersed, Sergeant Lyra Vane, Eris's second-in-command, fell in a step beside him in the corridor. "Why do I get the feeling we're not being told everything?" she murmured, voice pitched low enough that only he could hear. Lyra had been with him for 7 years, a battle-hardened veteran who'd survived 3 campaigns that had decimated other units. She had an uncanny intuition for danger that Eris had learned to trust. "Because we're not," he replied quietly. "Prep the Leviathans for worst-case scenarios. Full environmental gear, maximum ammunition loads, extended medical supplies." "Sir," she nodded, understanding immediately. "And what about the good doctor?" She seemed pretty concerned. "Find her. I want to know exactly what made her speak up against Kale in a briefing room full of his yes-men." That took courage. Or fear. Hours later, as the massive transport ships prepared for departure, Eris found Dr. Vance in the science bay, hurriedly organizing her equipment. "Dr. Vance," he began, "I'd like to hear more about your concerns regarding Charybdis." She looked up, seemingly surprised that a military officer would seek her opinion. "Captain Thorne, I was told you have quite the reputation for bringing your people back alive." "I try," he said simply, "which is why I'm here." Alara hesitated, then pulled up a holographic display of fragmented data. "These are the readings from our preliminary probes. See these patterns? They suggest an ecosystem of unprecedented aggression and competition. And these energy signatures." She pointed to swirling patterns. "They're like nothing we've encountered. They interfere with our scanning technology, so our data is incomplete at best. And Kale knows this. I submitted a full report recommending at least 6 months of remote study before any manned mission." Her frustration was evident. It was dismissed as overly cautious and impeding resource acquisition priorities. Eris studied the data, feeling his unease grow. "What should we be prepared for? Honestly, I don't know. And that's what terrifies me." Alara's voice lowered. "Captain, in my 15 years studying alien ecosystems, I've never recommended against a planetary expedition. Until now, the journey to Charybdis took 3 days, during which Eris briefed his forces as thoroughly as possible with the limited information available. The Leviathans, at least, took his warnings seriously, meticulously checking their equipment and reviewing contingency plans. The rest of the expeditionary force showed varying degrees of concern. Many of the officers dismissed the potential threats, confident in the Alliance's military superiority. As they approached the planet, Eris stood on the bridge of the command ship, watching as Charybdis grew larger in the view screen. It was beautiful in a strange, unsettling way, swirling cloud patterns in shades of amber and violet, vast oceans of deep indigo, and continents covered in vegetation so vibrant that it seemed to glow. "Initial landing zone scans complete, Captain," reported the tactical officer. "Coordinates match our designated target for the primary outpost. Atmospheric conditions are within acceptable parameters. Any signs of large fauna or unusual activity?" Eris asked. "Negative, sir. Some movement in the vegetation, but nothing registering above Class 3 threat assessment." Eris exchanged glances with Lyra, who stood beside him. Class 3 meant nothing larger than an earth wolf. Manageable threats for trained soldiers. Why then did he feel like they were walking into a trap? "Deploy the advanced scouts," he ordered. "Full environmental protocols in effect until we've established a secure perimeter." The initial landing seemed to confirm Marshal Kale's assessment. The advanced teams reported a stable landing zone in a clearing surrounded by dense, colorful forest. The air was breathable with only basic filtration, and initial readings confirmed rich phenium deposits just below the surface. Over the next 12 hours, the full expeditionary force landed and began establishing their base camp. Engineers set up prefabricated structures, defense perimeters were established, and initial survey teams ventured into the surrounding forest to map the immediate area. Eris stood at the edge of the clearing as twilight approached, watching the alien sun sink beneath the horizon in a display of colors that would have been breathtaking under different circumstances. Dr. Vance approached, scanning equipment in hand. "It's too quiet," she said without preamble. Eris had noticed the same thing. Despite the lush vegetation, there were no sounds of wildlife, no equivalents to birds, insects, or small animals. The forest was completely silent. In a healthy ecosystem, there should be constant communication between species, Ilara continued. Warning calls, mating displays, territorial disputes. This silence is unnatural. Before Eris could respond, his comm unit crackled to life. "Captain Thorne," came an urgent voice. "Scout Team Alpha requesting immediate assistance. We've lost contact with Sierra and Echo teams, and we're detecting unusual movement patterns throughout the forest." "Location," Eris demanded, already signaling to Lyra to assemble a response team. "Grid coordinates 27 to 43, approximately 2 kilometers northeast of base camp. Sir, our sensors are malfunctioning and we're experiencing visual distortions. Something's interfering with the transmission cut to static. All units, alert status 1. Eris broadcast throughout the camp. Defensive perimeter, full activation. Leviathans, gear up for immediate deployment." Within minutes, Eris led a team of his best soldiers toward the last known location of the scout teams. The forest had transformed with the falling darkness, the previously vibrant vegetation now emitting a faint bioluminescent glow that cast eerie shadows. Their helmet lamps carved harsh paths through the ethereal light, turning the beautiful into something sinister. They found what remained of Scout Team Alpha 1 kilometer from the base camp. For bodies lay strewn across a small clearing, their combat armor shredded as if made of paper rather than advanced composites. One soldier still lived, barely, his breathing labored and eyes wide with terror. "See, Captain," he gasped as Eris knelt beside him. "They came from everywhere, camouflaged perfectly, like the plants themselves were hunting us." "Who? What attacked you, soldier?" Eris pressed. "Not who. What? The forest. It's alive, sir. All of it. Working together." His eyes rolled back as he coughed, a spray of blood visible even in the dim light. "Watch the ground. They're under." The warning came too late. The earth beneath one of Eris's soldiers erupted, revealing a massive creature resembling a centipede, but with a chitinous exoskeleton that gleamed like polished metal. Before anyone could react, it had wrapped around the soldier and disappeared back beneath the surface, leaving only a scream that cut off abruptly. "Fall back," Eris shouted, grabbing the wounded scout. Defensive formation covering fire. The retreat to base camp became a nightmarish gauntlet. The forest, previously silent, now echoed with sounds, rustling vegetation, clicking mandibles, and the occasional wet, organic noises that made the hair on the backs of their necks stand up. Shapes moved in their peripheral vision, always just out of direct sight. 3 more soldiers fell before they reached the perimeter, taken by creatures that moved too quickly to identify clearly. Some airborne, some emerging from the ground or trees, all demonstrating predatory efficiency that suggested they had evolved specifically to hunt and kill. When they finally reached the base camp, they found it already under siege. Creatures of various sizes and forms were testing the defenses, probing for weaknesses with an intelligence that seemed impossible for non-sentient life. "Status report," Eris demanded, finding the command center in chaos. "Sir, we've lost contact with outposts 3 through 7, reported a communications officer. Defense systems are experiencing unexplained malfunctions. And there's something in the air. The medical bay is filling with personnel suffering from respiratory distress and hallucinations." Dr. Vance pushed her way through the crowded command center, her face pale but determined. "It's fungal spores," she announced. "I've identified them in the air samples. They're microscopic but highly toxic, causing respiratory inflammation and neurological effects. We need to upgrade all filtration systems immediately." Over the next 72 hours, the situation deteriorated rapidly. The creatures attacking the base grew more numerous and their tactics more coordinated, suggesting a level of collective intelligence that defied conventional understanding of evolutionary biology. The toxic spores in the air necessitated full environmental suits, which limited mobility and communication. Attempts to establish secure outposts failed one after another. Heavy machinery became useless when vine-like organisms infiltrated their systems, somehow understanding exactly which components to target. Armored vehicles were immobilized by corrosive secretions that melted through even the toughest alloys. The death toll mounted with horrifying speed. By the end of the first week, nearly 2,000 soldiers had been lost, with countless more wounded or incapacitated by the planet's biological weapons. In the medical bay, now overflowing with the injured and dying, Eris found Dr. Vance working tirelessly despite her own exhaustion. "This isn't natural evolution," she told him quietly, away from the ears of the suffering soldiers. "The level of adaptation we're seeing, the coordination between different species, it's as if the entire ecosystem is a single organism with a shared defense system. You're saying the planet itself is fighting us?" "In a manner of speaking, yes. Every species we've encountered seems specifically designed to counter technological advantages. The fungal spores target our respiratory systems, but leave the native fauna unaffected. The burrowing predators can detect and bypass our sensor grids. The arboreal hunters can see through our stealth technology. Could this be artificial? Some kind of engineered defense system left by an advanced civilization?" Alara shook her head. "I don't think so. This feels older, more fundamental. It's as if life on this planet evolved specifically to prevent exploitation by outside forces." Before they could discuss further, an explosion rocked the base, followed by alarms blaring throughout the compound. "Main generator has been compromised," came the frantic report over the comm system. "Backup systems failing. Perimeter defenses offline in sectors 7 through 12. The attack that followed was devastating. With the defensive systems compromised, the creatures of Charybdis swarmed the base from all directions. Soldiers fought desperately, but their weapons seemed increasingly ineffective as the planet's fauna adapted to each new threat. A week later, the remnants of the expeditionary force were scattered and in full retreat. Communication between units was sporadic at best, and the chain of command had fractured. The original mission was forgotten. Survival was now the only objective. Eris had gathered what remained of his Leviathans and as many other survivors as they could find, less than 300 soldiers from the original 10,000. Their destination was Emergency Rendezvous Point Alpha, a plateaued area 15 kilometers from the original landing site, chosen for its defensibility and clear sight lines. "If anyone's sending a rescue mission, that's where they'll look first," Eris explained to the exhausted group. "We make our stand there." The journey was a harrowing gauntlet through increasingly hostile terrain. Acid rain fell from skies, turned violent with electromagnetic storms that disrupted communications and navigation equipment. New predators emerged each night, somehow more terrifying than those they'd faced before. Dr. Vance had become an invaluable member of their group, her scientific knowledge providing critical insights that had saved countless lives. She worked tirelessly to develop countermeasures against the biological threats, often exposing herself to danger to collect samples. On the 10th day of their journey, they encountered a new threat: microscopic neural parasites that could penetrate even their sealed environmental suits. The first victims went mad, turning on their comrades before succumbing to cerebral hemorrhages. "They're adapting to target our nervous systems specifically," Alara explained as she examined a fallen soldier. "I need to collect samples to develop a countermeasure." Despite Eris's objections, She ventured alone into a dense grove where the parasite concentration seemed highest. She returned hours later, pale and swaying, but clutching a sealed container. "I've identified the parasite's reproductive cycle," she said weakly. "We can modify our suit filters to block them, but—" She collapsed, blood trickling from her ears and nose. In her final moments of lucidity, she gave Eris the necessary specifications for the modifications. "The planet defends itself, Captain," she whispered. "It learns from each attack, each invasion. We never stood a chance." With Dr. Vance's death, morale plummeted. The survivors looked to Eris with increasingly desperate eyes, hoping for a miracle he couldn't provide. Each day brought new losses, new horrors. Lyra was severely wounded during an ambush by shadow hunters, predators with near-perfect camouflage abilities. "Leave me behind, sir," she insisted as Eris carried her through a ravine. "I'm slowing everyone down." "The Leviathans leave no one behind, Sergeant," he replied firmly, though they both knew their numbers were dwindling past the point where such distinctions mattered. The difficult decisions mounted. Those too wounded to continue had to be left with mercy doses of pain medication and a sidearm. Limited supplies meant rationing that left everyone weakened. The constant state of alertness wore down even the most hardened veterans. By the time they reached the vicinity of the rendezvous point, only 27 survivors remained, and waiting for them was a final, terrible challenge. The plateau was the territory of what the surviving soldiers had come to call an alpha predator, a colossal creature that combined the worst aspects of every predator they'd encountered. Its armored hide repelled their weapons. Its multiple sensory organs detected them regardless of stealth measures, and its intelligence was terrifyingly apparent in the calculated way it hunted them. They made camp at the base of the plateau, gathering their strength for the final push. Eris knew their chances were slim, but the alternative, remaining in the lowlands, meant certain death. "We go at dawn," he told the survivors. "Full combat load, coordinated attack. The creature can't be everywhere at once." That night, Lyra's condition worsened. The wound from the shadow hunter had become infected with something their medical supplies couldn't combat. "Been quite a ride, hasn't it, sir?" she said, her voice weak but her eyes still sharp. "Save your strength, Sergeant. We need you for tomorrow." She smiled faintly. "We both know I'm not making it up that plateau, but I can still be useful." She outlined a plan. She would create a diversion, drawing the alpha predator away from the eastern slope, allowing the others a chance to reach the summit. "Absolutely not," Eris began, but Lyra cut him off. "With respect, Captain, I'm dead anyway. Let me choose how." At dawn, they put Lyra's plan into action. She took their remaining explosives and headed west, while Eris led the others east. The diversion worked. The sounds of detonations and weapons fire drew the creature away, allowing the main group to make progress up the rocky slope. From a distance came Lyra's voice over the calm despite the sounds of battle surrounding her. "It's been an honor serving with you, Captain Thorne. Make sure someone knows what happened here." Then silence. The remaining climb was brutal. The alpha predator, realizing it had been tricked, returned with terrifying speed. 3 more soldiers fell before they reached the summit. Then 5 more as they tried to establish a defensive position. In the end, it came down to Eris and 2 others, Corporal Way and Private Johansson. They had reached the center of the plateau, where, according to protocol, any rescue ship would attempt landing. The alpha predator stalked them relentlessly, wounded but seemingly indefatigable. It had learned their weapons, their tactics. Each exchange left them weaker, while it seemed to grow stronger. "We need to split up," Eris decided. "It can't chase all of us." "With respect, sir," Way said, "you need to be the one who makes it. You know everything that's happened here." Before Eris could object, Way and Johansson moved in opposite directions, drawing the creature's attention. The alpha predator hesitated, then went after Way, who was firing his weapon continuously to make himself the more obvious target. Eris found himself alone in the center of the plateau, listening to the distant sounds of his last soldiers dying. Around him, the beautiful devastation of Charybdis stretched in every direction, indifferent to the human tragedy it had hosted. The alpha predator returned, moving with deliberate slowness now that its prey was cornered. Eris stood his ground, weapon ready though he knew it would be ineffective. His body was battered, his combat suit torn and malfunctioning, his supplies exhausted. In a desperate gambit, he used his last explosive charge to trigger a rock slide, momentarily burying the creature under tons of stone. He knew it wouldn't kill it, but it might buy him time, though for what he wasn't sure. No rescue was coming. No one even knew they needed rescuing. As the dust settled, Eris collapsed against a boulder, his injuries finally overwhelming him. Above, the sky of Charybdis glowed with the ethereal colors of its strange atmosphere, beautiful despite everything. The sound came so faintly at first that he thought it was hallucination, the distinctive hum of engines. Looking up with vision blurred from exhaustion, he saw a small, automated scout ship descending toward the plateau, the kind programmed to respond to emergency beacons and perform routine checks on established outposts. With the last of his strength, Eris activated his emergency transponder and fired a flare. The scout ship adjusted its course, hovering just above the ground near his position. Its single-person compartment opened invitingly. Behind him, the rocks began to shift as the alpha predator dug itself free. Eris dragged himself into the scout ship just as the creature emerged, its multiple limbs scrabbling across the rocky ground with terrible speed. The compartment sealed automatically, and the ship's automated systems began its ascent sequence. Through the viewport, Eris watched as Charybdis receded beneath him, beautiful, deadly, unconquered. 3 weeks later, Eris Thorn stood before the supreme command of the Xylar Alliance in the same briefing room where this nightmare had begun. His body was still healing. Some wounds would leave permanent scars, others might never heal at all. But he stood straight, his voice unwavering as he delivered his report. Marshal Kale sat at the center of the command table, his face impassive as Eris detailed the complete destruction of the 3rd Expeditionary Corps and the true nature of Charybdis. "These claims are extraordinary, Captain," Kale said when Eris had finished, "and convenient, given that there are no other survivors to corroborate your story. I've submitted the data from my suit's recording systems, sir. Dr. Vance's research logs, the medical scans of my injuries, all of which could be manipulated or misinterpreted," Kale countered. "What you're describing defies biological understanding. An entire ecosystem functioning as a coordinated defense system. It sounds more like the hallucinations of a man suffering from extreme stress and exposure to unknown toxins." Eris had anticipated this response. Without breaking eye contact with Kale, he removed his uniform jacket and then his shirt, revealing his torso covered in scars, some surgical, others ragged and strange, forming patterns that no human weapon could create. "These are made by creatures that should not exist, Marshal. Creatures that evolved specifically to counter our technology, our tactics, our very biology." He stepped forward, placing a data crystal on the table. "This contains Dr. Vance's final research, her analysis of the neural parasites, the fungal spores, the adaptive capabilities of Charybdis life forms. She gave her life to collect this data." The room fell silent. Even Kale seemed momentarily at a loss. "I'm the only survivor of 10,000 troops, Marshal," Eris continued, his voice dropping to a near whisper that somehow filled the room. 10,000 Alliance soldiers dead because we rushed into a situation we didn't understand, chasing resources without proper intelligence or preparation. Because someone decided that Athenium was worth any cost. The debriefing lasted hours, with experts called in to examine Eris's evidence. Eventually, the weight of his testimony and the physical evidence could not be dismissed. Charybdis was officially classified as an Omega-level Deathworld, absolutely forbidden territory, a designation given to fewer than 5 planets in the entire catalog of explored space. The political fallout was significant. Questions were raised about the decision-making process that had led to such a catastrophic loss of personnel. Marshal Kale's authority was undermined, though the Xylar power structure protected him from formal consequences. Eris was medically discharged with full honors, his physical injuries deemed too severe for continued service. The psychological trauma, what the medical reports clinically termed extreme post-traumatic stress disorder with recurring Charybdis-specific hallucinations, went largely untreated. Some traumas were beyond the capabilities of Alliance medicine. In his small apartment on the outer ring of Vanguard Station, Eris spent his days staring out at the stars, wondering how many other Charybdises waited out there, worlds that would not tolerate exploitation, that had evolved defenses beyond human comprehension. He kept a small memento on his desk, a scientific instrument that had belonged to Dr. Vance. Sometimes he would hold it, remembering her courage and her final words about a planet that could defend itself. The nightmares came every night, visions of the alpha predator, of shadow hunters, of the silent forest that hid 1,000 ways to die. He saw the faces of those he'd left behind, particularly Lyra's final smile as she embarked on her suicidal diversion. Occasionally, Alliance officials would consult him about potential threats on newly discovered worlds. They listened more carefully now, though he suspected it was only a matter of time before resource hunger outweighed caution once again. One evening, as he watched a distant transport ship departing for some new frontier, Eris made a decision. The galaxy needed to know what had happened on Charybdis, not the sanitized version in the official reports, but the truth about what happened when human arrogance collided with a world that refused to be conquered. He began writing his account, not knowing if anyone would publish it, not caring about the potential repercussions from an alliance that preferred its failures to remain quiet. Someone needed to remember the 3rd Expeditionary Corps. Someone needed to heed the warning of Charybdis. As he wrote the first words, Eris glanced at the small potted plant on his windowsill, the only green thing he could tolerate in his living space. For a moment, he thought he saw it move in a way that couldn't be explained by the ambient air currents. He smiled grimly and continued writing. Perhaps Charybdis wasn't finished with him after all.